Monday Night Raw starts off with Seth Rollins. Starts off with Seth Rollins confronting Roman Reigns. They have a bit of a little stare down. Then Seth Rollins ends up making his entrance. He ends up making his entrance. Braun Breaker ends up attacking Seth Rollins, brutally, constantly attacking him. I think it ends with a spear. No, I don't think it ends with a spear, but he ends up attacking him, goes away. Management and security tries, break it apart, make sure Braun goes to the backstage and try to get, Seth Rollins some help. He eventually breaks away from security and all that and attacks him again. Stands tall. This eventually leads to a segment later in the show with Joe Hendry and the Street Profits due to the Vision feuding with Joe Hendry. They end up having a match with him and Austin Theory, if I'm not mistaken, where I don't know who won the match because I'm going to be honest, I have not been caring about this. I like what they're doing with Joe Hendry, but I just don't think Joe Hendry is a major factor into this storyline. That's why I haven't been mentioning it. So that's why I wasn't really investing into it because I don't know what the end goal is with Joe Hendry after the end of this whole Vision thing because it seems like the main story is really the Street Profits eventually getting a tag team championship opportunity. So that's why I'm a bit like not really caring. That's why I didn't really invest into this match, but I don't know how the match ended. I don't know who won, or I don't know if it ended in DQ, but I just know after the match, though, you end up getting Logan Paul and Austin Theory attacking Joe Hendry. This allowed the Street Profits to come in to try to make the save. Then eventually you end up getting Braun Breaker to help out the Vision. He takes out the Street Profits. Then Seth Rollins ends up coming out, attacking Braun Breaker. They brawl. Seth Rollins did get the upper hand until Montez Ford ended up getting into the fold. He ends up going for his signature dive onto the outside. This allowed Seth Rollins to get distracted. Braun Breaker ends up hitting his spear, and he ends up standing tall. This is great. I like what they're doing here. I like the story they've been telling. I like Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker constantly attacking each other every chance they get. Really love what they're doing here. Very interested to see how this match plays out at Backlash because it could really go out the way because I could see Seth winning or I could see Braun winning based off how typically WWE likes to book. Whoever stands tall on the go-home show is typically the one that loses the match. So I'm assuming they're probably going to go that route. I wouldn't be mad at either person because this is going to be definitely a multitude of matches. They're going to have multiple matches to prove who's the best between Braun and Seth. But so far, I'm very interested in this feud. I really like what they've been doing here. I like the guys just constantly attacking each other, constantly just wanting to constantly attack each other over and over again, which I do like. We've been needing a feud like this, to be honest with you. We've been needing kind of like that blood feud of two guys that just hate each other with pure hate. We could have had this with Roman and Punk, but they kind of messed that up a bit. But I like this. We've been missing something like this in the WWE for a bit. So I like what they're doing here. Hopefully they, make the right choice in the end of who goes over and this catapults Braun Breaker to the main event scene eventually whenever they're ready to put the rocket on him. But hopefully this does elevate Braun Breaker to another level after this feud. But so far I've been loving what we've been doing with this whole Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins feud. Afterwards, we end up getting Finn Balor versus JD McDonough. This was a solid match overall. Really enjoyed this match. Towards the end, though, we end up getting a moment where Liv Morgan, I think she had a hammer, if I'm not mistaken. She ends up tossing the hammer to Roxanne, distracts the referee. Roxanne hits the hammer on Finn Balor. This allowed JD to pick the victory. They're telling the story of does Roxanne have pure loyalty towards the Judgment Day segment earlier in the show where Liv confront Roxanne about Finn being in the clubhouse and why she didn't tell her that Finn was in the clubhouse. Why does she have to watch on Raw on Netflix to figure that out? Roxanne basically ended up saying that, look, she told Finn Balor off and that she should have said something, that Liv Morgan was right about that, but she told him off anyway, and that my loyalty lies with the Judgment Day. They're telling the story of does Roxanne have loyalty towards the Judgment Day? Because originally Roxanne wasn't supposed to be out there, but she ended up going out there, and then Liv Morgan and Raquel ended up going out a few minutes later to confront Roxanne. So they're clearly telling the story of does Roxanne have loyalty? And each time when they're like around each other, Roxanne is the only one who's not like celebrating, that seem happy. She seems very uninterested. Like when they were celebrating the victory with JD, she's holding JD's hand, but she has like a straight plain face. She's not celebrating. She's not happy. Even in backstage segments, she's just not really, seems like she's having a fun time. So they're clearly telling a story there, which I am interested in. WWE always finds a way to to get me interested in Judgment Day, which is very ironic because I've been complaining about Judgment Day for a while, but they always find a way to make me interested. Now look, this story can be good. The only problem is Triple H has a very bad history with Judgment Day stories. Did it with Finn Balor, Damian Priest. Did it with Finn Balor just recently with Dominic Mysterio. He has a bet, Rhea Ripley, Liv Morgan. So the problem is he does a good job building it up. He just have a hard time following through with it. That's the main issue because he always takes way too long to pull the trigger, makes the matches and the feud last way too long. So if he could just not make this be a year-long thing, we're good. But so far, I like what they're doing with the teases of Roxanne. Plus, if it's going to lead to Roxanne dethroning Liv Morgan, I ain't going to complain about it. we end up getting a tag team match between Javon Evans, Penta versus Ethan Page and Rusev. This is a really solid match. Really enjoyed this match from beginning to end. Javon Evans just continues to be a very special wrestler. Every time I watch him, he just continues to do things that impresses me. Towards the end of the match, though, I think it was a moment where Penta ended up getting distracted because I think Rusev attacked Javon Evans on the outside. No, Rusev attacked Penta on the outside. This allowed Ethan Page to take advantage and end up picking up the victory. So he ended up pinning Penta, which was very shocking because I did not expect Penta, the IC champion, to get pinned. Now, I'm not typically a fan of the champion getting pinned. In this scenario, it isn't the worst case because, again, it's how you get pinned. That's really the issue. It would be different if this was like a roll-up pin, but this was a scenario where Rusev interfered, made Penta a bit more injured than he was supposed to. It wasn't clean. So this is a situation where it works. I'm assuming eventually this is going to lead to some, because it looks like they're trying to do this pairing with Rusev and Ethan Page. I like the dynamic. This could eventually cause problems because I'm assuming Ethan would probably get a match opportunity. Rusev doesn't like that. I can easily see that coming into play. So I like what they're doing. I love the Intercontinental Championship picture with Javon, Ethan, Rusev. I really like what they're doing here. Very entertaining. I love what they're doing here. I like all the players involved. Very interested to see how this eventually plays out. Is it going to be just a one-on-one match between each guy? Is it going to be a eventual fatal four-way, which would be dope? So I'm very interested how this eventually unfolds. I love what they're doing with Ethan Page and his booking. I actually like the pairing between him and Rusev, where Ethan Page is this over-the-top, goofy, like arrogant, cocky heel, where Rusev is just this brute dominant force. It was a moment where after the match, Ethan tries to hug Rusev, and Rusev was like, "Don't do that. Like, we're not that close," which I thought was funny. I love this pairing, actually. This pairing is I actually like this pairing. Very interested to see what they do next with going forward with this IC title. Moving on, we end up getting Becky Lynch and Sol Ruka. It started off with Sol Ruka was about to sign her contract to make her an official member of Monday Night Raw. Becky Lynch ends up interfering. She feels disrespected because she felt like she was supposed to have a segment. She blaming Adam Pearce for her not having a segment, that she's wondering why she doesn't have a segment on Raw. She ends up mentioning, of course, being the greatest woman wrestler of all time. So Ruka interrupts. She, of course, is annoyed, frustrated with Becky Lynch just constantly making everything about herself. They go back and forth for a bit. It gets to a point where So Ruka ends up calling her a bitch. And then we end up getting a moment where Becky Lynch tries to hit So Ruka. So Ruka dodges it, hits Adam Pearce by mistake. Becky Lynch is distracted, focused on Adam Pearce. This allows So Ruka to end up hitting the Soul Snatcher and stands tall. So I'm assuming the plan moving forward is for eventually this to be a feud. So Ruka eventually dethrones Becky Lynch, which I'm not mad at personally. I've been wanting this to be a thing for a while, not So Ruka specifically, just for if Becky Lynch is going to lose the IC title, she should put over talent that can be elevated from it, not talent that don't really need it. This is one of the reasons why I was very high on the Bayley and the Lyra and Becky Lynch feud, because that was a feud that elevated Lyra. They haven't done much with Lyra since then, but that feud definitely elevated Lyra. I was very high on the Maxine Dupree stuff as well, even though the booking was a bit shaky on that. I liked it because Maxine Dupree is someone that would have benefited from Becky Lynch if they would have just capitalized on it, but they didn't capitalize on it. So let's just hope that they capitalize on this with Sol Ruka. So I enjoyed the segment overall. Now, there's one thing I want to say. I find it funny that no one is mentioning her botching the move, because when other wrestlers botch, like Jay Cargill and Jey Uso, everyone constantly called them bad wrestlers and constantly want to over nitpick on it, even though every wrestler botched. But when Sol Ruka, the internet darling, does it, no one wants to say anything. Now, mind you, I don't care about botches. I don't, because it's going to happen. It happens to every wrestler. It is what it is. You can't be better. I just find it ironic, the double standard that you guys have when it comes to certain wrestlers when they botch. But nonetheless, this was a good segment. Really enjoyed it. Can't wait to see how this eventual feud plays out. Also, can we calm down with women wrestlers calling women the B word? Look, it's getting overused. I don't mind the word. It's just over fucking used. We have seen this through the entire WrestleMania build. The amount of times that women have called each other the B word is ridiculous. Liv Morgan and Stephanie called each other that like 8 times. Rhea and Jade, oh my God, that amount of times they have said that word. Calm down with the word. I'm cool with the word being used, but we need to stop overusing it. It's just a cheap way to get a reaction. Like, they just use that word when they don't have nothing to really say to the other women, so they just call the woman a B just to get a reaction. It's like, calm down, okay? Find something else to use. We need to calm down with that word. It's overused in the past few months. Let's find something else. We've been over abusing that word. But nonetheless, I'm very excited for this feud, and I can't wait to see how this plays out. Moving on to the Open Femi Open Challenge, we end up getting Alpha Academy. They end up responding to the Open Challenge. They come in the ring. It looked like it was going to be Akira Tozawa that was going to answer, but it ended up being Otis, which I did like because I was like, please don't be Akira Tozawa. Like, Akira Tozawa is not a credible opponent. Let's not do this. Now, Otis isn't the most credible opponent either, but the difference is that Otis at least has the build to be somewhat credible, so you could buy into it to a bit. So it's a lot better than Akira Tozawa at least. And plus, at least Otis has some victories in the past where like he had at least he had some stuff. At least he had the stuff with Chad Gable that was like 2 to 3 years ago. Where Akira Tozawa has always been a jobber, where that hasn't been the same for Otis. At least Otis won some tag team gold, etc. So this match was short, which it should be, but it was a very entertaining short match. Obafemi picked up Otis like 2 times in this match. The first time he just completely just picked him up, tossed him, and then the other time he did a powerbomb. Obafemi's strength is ridiculous at this point, man. But this was a very entertaining match, very short match, but very entertaining. A lot of people are complaining that you go from beating Brock Lesnar to this. It's like, bro, what did you guys expect? You expect him just to defeat every Hall of Famer and legend right out the gate? You have to continue to build him up. Let's wait for that. We don't need to have him face all of these legends immediately. Plus, I don't mind this at all because, again, I said this before, all of the people that he could potentially face that will like slowly build him up, he can't right now. Bronson Reed, Sheamus is injured from what I heard. So it's like there are certain wrestlers that could have been in this position to help build a feud, but he just doesn't have them right now. So open challenge, I don't mind it personally. I do think they're overusing it with certain wrestlers, mainly on SmackDown. So that's why it's a bit of annoying. But in this situation, I don't mind it. I'm enjoying it so far. We end up getting an Asuka and Io Sky segment. They end up having a sit-down, like, interview segment where they just speak to each other. Basically, the premise of both of them feel like they're in the right. Both of them feel like that they both changed on each other. They're not the person that they looked up to. They're not the person that they grew up with, and that they completely changed. And they feel like that their friendship is fractured due to both of them changing, basically. I like this segment. This was good. Towards the end of the segment, Asuka ended up using her miss on Io Sky, and that's how it ended. I like this overall. This was a solid, cool segment. Nothing too major. Very interested to see how the match plays out. I know a lot of people are assuming that Kairi Sane will come back at Backlash to interfere. I don't know if that's a possibility. I'm not saying it's impossible because I could definitely see it. I'm just not going to get my hopes up for that. But nonetheless, this is a solid segment. I'm hoping this is the end of the feud, though, because I do not want this feud to continue. Like, the feud has dragged on long enough. It's been a year since this feud first started. Like, it's reaching certain points that it's going a bit too far. So hopefully this is the end of the feud, and I hope they deliver at Backlash. Now we do end up getting the main event. We end up getting Roman Reigns, Jacob Fatu. They have their official contract signing for the World Heavyweight Championship match at Backlash. This was a very solid segment. I really enjoyed this. Starts up Roman. He basically ends up mentioning the amount of years he's been in WWE, him carrying the company, him carrying his family, mentioning him being in WWE for 12 years. Then he ends up mentioning that Jacob Fatu used the Samoan grip, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the move. That's what it's called. He ends up using the Tongan Death Grip. That's what it's called. He used the Tongan Death Grip, ends up mentioning how that's a move that you're only supposed to use when you're desperate. It's a last-ditch effort that you don't supposed to use down family. Jacob interrupts him, basically ends up saying that I am desperate, that I am, this is my last resort, that I'm trying to do whatever it takes to get that World Heavyweight Championship, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means going through my own family. Roman ends up responding back, ends up mentioning family. He ends up mentioning how that Jacob mentioning his family, how he got to provide for his kids. He ends up mentioning that I'm providing for generation of children. Then he ends up mentioning, him being at the top of the mountain in WWE, how everything is his in the WWE, how he runs WWE. And then he ends up mentioning that in the family, that we're both equals, we're on the same level, but when it comes to inside the ring, you're beneath me. Jacob gets frustrated. He attacks Roman. He ends up using the Tongan Death Grip again. Ends up choke slamming him through the table. Stands tall at the end, and that's how we end Monday Night Raw. This was a good segment. Really enjoyed this overall. Really thought it was a solid back and forth between both guys. Really can't wait for that match. Very interested to see how that match plays out, especially with both guys being heavily protected. Very interested to see if there's any shenanigans to protect either wrestler, or is it just going to be a clean match? I hope it is a clean match, but I can easily see them doing some shenanigans. But overall, I thought this was really good. Made Jacob look really strong, which I am liking so far. I like how they're making Jacob look very strong, making him look equal, if not more powerful than Roman Reigns, which I am enjoying. Very interested to see how the dynamics flip after the match, whether Jacob or Roman wins, which I'm assuming Roman will win. I'm very interested to see, will Jacob fall in line with Roman? Will he have more respect for Roman after the match? Or possibly, if Jacob wins, will Roman fall in line with Jacob? Will, Roman attitude change toward Jacob? Who knows? But overall show, I thought was really good. I thought this was a really good overall show. You guys let me know your overall thoughts and opinions down below. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Make sure you hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my content. But yeah, that's it.